This is Wiz 1500 from Raptor Forum Z. I'm going to show you guys how to make the connection underneath the dash for the upfitter switches. I've already done it on my truck, so I'm going to actually take it apart and show you what I did just to help you guys out. A couple of you have PM'd me on some questions and whatnot, so hopefully I can clear it all up and make it pretty painless for you guys. It's not too bad of a job. It's kind of tight up in there. You know, you got to work in some tight confines, but we can get it done. I'll show you. One of the first things I like to do is, as you can hear the door chime going off, because I have the key in the ignition and the key in the auxiliary position, is you just take your screwdriver and go right up to your door latch and roll it so the door thinks that it's closed, and now your chime is gone. So no matter what you do with the key, if you go into run position or auxiliary position or whatnot, that chime ain't going to be bugging you, so you can listen to your tunes. And then here's a helpful reminder. Just put your screwdriver right there so you don't forget to open the latch back up before you try closing the door. And then when it does come time to close the door, you just simply hit the handle and you're good to go. Alright guys, let's dig into it. First thing, obviously move the seat back so we can get up in there. And then we can remove the side panel. Just grab it in the hole here, clip it forward, and roll it out of your weather stripping. Alright, and then when it comes time to put this back in, it's just a simple matter of getting it up underneath the weather stripping and snapping it back in. So it's pretty easy. So we'll get that out so we can see what's going on. And there's going to be 3 screws, 7mm, up underneath the dash for the that retains the glove box. I've already got 2 of them out. So I'm going to pull this last one. And put your screws in your little holder. Open the glove box, give it a little twist, and the whole glove box comes right out. Now we'll go inside and see what's going on in there with the harness. Alright, I found it easier to get this green connector out of the way, so use our handy little clippy tool. You can use needle nose or whatnot, or just pull on it pretty stiffly and it'll come out. So we'll get this green clip out of the way, get it up and out. And this is the bundle that we're dealing with. There's 8 wires, and as you can see, mine's already connected. I took the liberty of cutting 2 of the wire, the heat shrink tube off of 2 of the wire sets that I've already soldered. The wires that are in my hand are going to be yellow, green with a brown stripe, violet small, and a brown small wire. Those are the 4 wires that are coming out of the switches, out of the switch relays actually. And the way it worked out in my truck is the yellow went to red for switch 1, switch 2 was green with a brown stripe to green, and the small violet to the big violet, and the small brown to the blue. And that'll give you 2 30s on the 1 and 2 switch for amperage, and then a 15 and a 10. So number 3 switch, which is a small violet. So you can tell that the smaller amperage wires are going to be smaller in diameter, and that's switches 3 and 4. So that's where we're at with this. Now, one thing I found that was that helped out was to take a box cutter and come up underneath, and this one's closed because this has actually already been slit, and I don't want to cut my hand trying to show you guys. But if you come up in here and you cut the harness tape a little bit, that'll allow you to spread the wires a little bit when you're trying to set them up so you can solder on them and stuff like that. So I'm going to give you guys a little how-to when it comes to soldering and whatnot over on the hobby bench, but this is what it looks like in the truck. Okay, we got our soldering gun hot, and I put a little bit of cardboard down so we don't get any little melt spots in our carpeting in case we get some drippage. What I do is I uncoil the solder, and I'm going to come in from the side with the solder and up underneath with the soldering gun, and we'll come right in and we'll just kind of resolder this to give you guys an idea of how I went about it. You can see you get the wire hot, solder to the top, let the solder kind of flow in, and you've got a good solder connection there. That baby ain't gonna go anywhere. And then we'll put some shrink tubing on it, and we'll be good to go. Okay, got a piece of shrink tubing. I've already cut it to size, and we're gonna slip that on here. And you don't want to go too far, obviously. You want to have it hang out a little bit so it's protecting the end. And then a lot of people use a lighter or a torch, but you can use the side of your soldering gun just like this. You don't want to use the tip because the tip is too hot. So you just kind of do this deal right here, and that'll shrink that tubing right down on there, and you'll have a nice protected joint. This was actually taught to me by an RC buddy of mine. He saw me doing some stuff one day. I went to break my lighter out. He goes, "Dude, just use your soldering gun." Well, that worked out pretty good. And there you have it. Now you got a connection made. I'll let that cool off, and it'll be tight as a turtle's butt. Alright, we got our shrink tube back over our connections, and we should be good to go under here. So we'll do a little zip tie on the end. So you make your loop up first, so you're not struggling up underneath there to try and get the end in. And just kind of grab your wires, grab your end, and give it a little pull. And there you go. Things are all in a nice little spot. And I hate having ends, so we'll just clip the end off. Now I had put this wire up out of the way for video purposes using a zip tie, so we'll get that back where it needs to go, which is just kind of out here in the middle of nowhere's land. And we take our green connector that we moved out of the way, put it back into the bracket. We're good to go. Put the reverse order with the glove box, 3 screws back into the bottom, and when you're putting that back in, just kind of do one of these deals, and then make sure that you put the clip into the bracket, and you'll be good to go. If you do misfire it and it ends up locked and it won't close for you, it may be because you had locked it without it being into the bracket. So you just grab the handle and open the latch back up and put her in there, and then put your 3 screws back in and your side cover back on, and you now have power underneath your hood. And we're going to head to the basement to the hobby bench, and I'm going to show you guys a couple of tips on soldering stuff. So I'll see you guys down there. So what I ended up using was a set of Exolite strippers, and if you get up and you're up underneath in the dash there, you just come up into the wire and give it a little squeeze and a little twist. And then I didn't have room to, and it was really awkward to, strip the wire, but I came in through the opening on the side, and I was able to grab the wire and just pull it apart, and then I had a good piece of copper to work with. Alright, now you got 2 empty wire, or 2 bare wires. Old school tells us, this is atypical, and then you wrap it with some electrical tape. Now, not very secure, because for obvious reasons it can be pulled apart. Now if this is being used in an emergency situation, which actually I had the front drive shaft break in my XLT one time up in Kalkaska, and I had to rewire the side of the transmission in the field, and I used a buck knife and some duct tape. But you can do this, kind of give it a little tie, and then obviously that'll, this is emergency situations only, is when you want to use something like this. Our next fastener are the old crimpy deals. Not a big fan of these. I've used them and whatnot, but here's a little secret I'll let you guys in on. Alright, when using this, these are junk. Okay, that's why they're all rusty. They were actually in the bottom of a toolbox that I bought at a garage sale last year. And the reason being is because of the way these guys crimp. It's really hard to get it nice and solid and tight tight in there. You know, it can be done, but at some point, you know, actually that one came out pretty good. And what it is the way the split ring or the split collar is inside the connector. You got to be lucky to get it orientated just right so it crimps really well. Now the preferred mechanical crimper is this style here with the spike, and for obvious reasons, because the spike will actually deform that split ring in there and give you a really nice secure mechanical crimp. So go in there, squish that bad boy, and then you can see the divot that it puts in there, and that is not going anywhere. Okay, our next type of connector is an inline connector. These are pretty good. The only problem with using them up underneath the dash is that we do have two different sized wires. So you got to kind of be careful of what's going on with all that because of the way that it pinches the wire when it mechanically crimps down in there. So that's why I didn't elect to go this route. You know, you can up underneath the dash. It's not really a corrosive area, and that's another issue with using mechanical clamps, is that you got a corrosion issue that you got to kind of be concerned about, in my opinion. You know, up under the dash, not too much of a big deal. This one is simple. This would be the line that you lay across. You know, you'd come up under the wire, and then this wire is not going to go all the way through because there's going to be a little door in there, a little block plate. And that's one thing about using these connectors too, is that you got to make sure that this wire is all the way up in there. And when you're laying on your back upside down up underneath this dash, you know, it's kind of a pain in the butt. So once all that's in there, then you squeeze it down, you grab your pair of channel locks there and give her a little squeeze and fold it over, and you know, you got a good connection. You know, it's a good connector, of course. You know, I actually think they're Navy certified. I thought I remember reading something about that, but again, laying upside down up underneath the dash, you know, kind of a pain in the butt to make sure that that second wire is up against that door and you're getting a good connection in there. This is my preferred way of making my connections. Whenever possible, I try to solder everything. So once you got the wire strip, make sure you give the wire a little twist, as you guys I'm sure know, so you don't have strands all over the place. One thing about soldering, I use rosin core solder designed for soldering electrical connections. It's 60-40. And, you know, there's a lot of other different solders out there, stuff for soldering up radiators and whatever, and silver soldering with a torch or whatnot, but this is designed for electrical stuff. All right, we got my piece of shrink tubing ready. Don't forget to put the wire through the shrink tubing. You know, obviously this is open-ended, but in the truck or whatnot, or when you're making any other kind of connection, you got to have the shrink tube in there. So we'll tin this wire up. As you can see, I'm putting the solder on the wire, not on the soldering gun. And now that's nice and tinned up. And we'll throw the other one in there. And then when you're doing this in the truck, you'll be able to orientate the wires and kind of bend them to where you need them to be so you can get to them. I'm using little clamps here on the bench for obvious reasons. So then once these are tinned up, then you can take, and I'm going cross-handed here, it's kind of crazy. And then you'll see the connection dries up. Alright, that's a solid joint. That ain't gonna go anywhere. You put your shrink tube in over the top of the whole schmeal. Just protect against corrosion and whatever, in shorts. And then use the lower heat side of your soldering iron like I showed you guys out in the truck. And this will shrink the shrink tubing down. And you won't get any contamination. You don't want to use the very tip of your soldering gun. It's a little too hot, it'll burn it. And then you also don't want all that contamination on there. Get into the next solder job you're doing. So and with that, you are golden. Okay, another connection, another way of doing it or whatever is with a mechanical type interface before you solder it, which is basically just twisting the wires together. And if you always go in the same direction, I go clockwise when I'm looking at it, clockwise, and you'll see in a minute what that amounts to. And you do that, and then again, where's my other solder at? There we go. Same type of deal, gun up underneath or iron up underneath. Hang on, let me clean the end of this. Clean tip is a happy tip. And you can see that the solder flows down in, and that's a rock solid connection there. Then you can take your shrink tubing or whatnot, go over the end of it and shrink it down. If you don't have shrink tubing, you can use electrical tape. Not all electrical tape is the same, from what I've been told. Best stuff to use, according to electricians in the plant, is the Super 33 Plus. Dry rotting, drying out, getting brittle, falling off type stuff. This is the stuff that they like to use. It's a 3M product by Scotch. But then I'll show you. Okay, so you use your 3M electrical tape, and then again, you can start in there, make a real nice tight type of deal, and twist it right off the end, pull it, and then we're going clockwise again, and that should pretty much be forever. You ain't never gonna have a problem with that. Well, I think that about covers it, guys. You got any questions, don't hesitate to give me a PM, or hit me up on the website or whatnot, and I think you guys will be alright. It's not really that hard of a job. It's just really tight confines up in there. So just take your time. Don't burn yourself doing it if you're using a soldering gun. And, when it's all said and done, go get your tires dirty, because that's what the truck is for.